what are you doing at this conference if everything's going so wonderfully? Hey, welcome back to the Church Staff Book Club. My name is Jonathan Malm.
And I'm Jason Young.
And we are now in chapter 4 of our book, How to Get a Return on Failure by John Maxwell. It's been good so far. I'm a firm believer that failure is a valuable asset in our lives. And this book just confirms a lot of the stuff that I believe. But our goal with this podcast is that we would be able to contextualize it for you working at a church. Hopefully that we can read together and get more from the book than we would if we would have just read alone. That's the idea. So whether you're working through this as a staff, watching these videos, or listening, or you're just doing it alone, we hope that you get more from this just by joining us in this process. So, Jason, this chapter, it was just kind of a continuation. It was sort of some of the benefits that you get from failure.
Yeah.
What did you get out of this?
I don't know if this is the right read on it, but I feel like kind of turning this corner a little bit more that he's talking about the tools, like how failure can lead to transformation. But I think in summary, what I would say on this chapter, and this is a cliche phrase to say, but there are a lot of people, they go through failure, they get bitter about it. There are other people who go through failure, they get better. So I think it's a little bit of that. And I think that maybe the key is like, how do you reflect on it? How do you respond to it?
Yeah, that's really good. The first kind of section of this chapter was talking about how failure can lead to resilience. And I was watching right now, as we're recording this, we're in the middle of the finals, the NBA finals. And I was watching last night the Knicks game. This will tell you when we recorded this. Donald Trump was there. And they showed him during the national anthem, and the whole stadium booed. Not the whole stadium, but there was a large number of people that were booing. And he just smiled. And I'm like, man, I'm just putting myself in his shoes, having a whole stadium booing you. How much, whether you like the guy or not, the guy is resilient. And I think that comes from, if you're in business, especially in New York real estate business, you've probably had a lot of failure under your belt. In the presidency, he has had a lot of failure under his belt. And I just think, man, how many of us could handle a whole stadium booing us and not just go home and cry that evening? I think I would totally cry. And so kind of it talks in this chapter about how to get resilience from failure, right? So he talks about self-compassion, basically just having compassion for yourself. We've talked about this a little bit. Recognition, recognizing what was actually happening in that situation. Active learning, cognitive agility, problem solving, finding meaning. Did any of those really particularly stick out to you?
I think all of them, when I look into each of them, kind of I've thought about like scenarios where maybe they have shown up and areas where I'm like, because I think failure exposes things about ourselves. And I think kind of reading through, I'm like, oh, I feel strong in that one. Oh, I remember a scenario in that one. That one, I've got a lot of work to do. And so it was more of, I tried to read this and hold it up like a mirror and ask myself, okay, Jason, like, where are you with blank? And trying to do this kind of, I don't know, self-assessment on, each of those areas and what it reveals and what maybe I let success hide and not give enough attention to failure. I don't know if that makes sense.
No, yeah. I think for me, a lot of the times, I don't know, one of this like really cathartic things that I do in life is I do a lot of puzzles. And sometimes I'll get lost 30, 45 minutes doing a puzzle. And I just have this inner dialogue in my head while I'm doing the puzzle where I'm thinking about past failures of my life or past mistakes I've made. And I think through like either how would I make them right? How would I have done things differently? And that's kind of one of the things that he talks about in this book is kind of how, when you have a failure, it's so important the questions that you ask after it.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people fail to ask questions and they don't learn because of those lack of questions. So I think, that person that I, that kind of that strife that we had, what would I have done differently? How would I approach them if I saw them today? Not that there's any need to necessarily resolve that, but how would I, if that issue came up again, how would I talk to them differently? And I find for me, having those times of working on a puzzle, or for some people it's going on a walk, or for some people it's, getting away on a retreat, and just unpacking it. And
Yeah.
I think a lot of us don't do that. A lot of us, that's one of the values of having a Sabbath or one of the values of, having downtime, which not a lot of us have. And so I think that's a critical element for learning from failure is how do you actually have time to process what you experience. If you get fired, that's a big failure, right? Like you have a lot of time, right? Like you really think
Yeah.
through, like you have this, like, okay, suddenly everything was taken from me. But what about whenever it's a failure that like, okay, it was a failure, but I'm still having to just lead forward with the charge. And I
Yeah.
think, I don't know, for me, that was one of those that like I need to remember to keep in my life is the opportunity to just like really unpack what happened.
Yeah. Love what you said because you're talking about kind of that reflection response moment. And I think this is true, but your response, including reflection to the failure, says more about you than the failure itself. But
Huh.
let me let me let me illustrate this confession time. This past week, I built a leadership experience over the last, I don't know, 60, 90 days.
What is a leadership
And
experience? What does that mean?
yeah, so imagine like an 8-hour immersive, some people would call it a workshop,
Uh-huh.
experience. This particular one was focused on one subject, the subject of feedback.
Uh-huh.
So, how do you, as a leader, deliver feedback? What's the biology and psychology around feedback? How do you ask for it? How do you receive it? Right. So, it kind of just takes this end to end feedback experience, and there's a lot of connotations around. Just you say the word feedback, and people have usually an emotion around it, right? So I delivered this experience. In full transparency, I wasn't feeling great about it,
Uh-huh.
rolling it out. I knew some people in the room were not there to experience it from a learner's perspective, but from an evaluative perspective.
Evaluating you or
Yes,
yeah.
and the content. Yes,
Uh-huh.
both. And
Because
so
they're your bosses or because they just don't like you?
just because they have they're a stakeholder in its success across an organization.
Gotcha.
And there was also an individual in there that I was going to be speaking at a big leadership conference for that wanted on the same subject that wanted to see what the content was like and what I was like because they had never
Uh-huh.
seen me.
Hmm.
So I have all this swirling in my head. I'm already not feeling great about the content. It's like, it's good,
Yeah.
but it's like rolling it out and you got to like work out the wrinkles and all this kind of stuff. Well, anyways,
And you're
throughout
looking
the
for that maybe
day,
that one hook that like, "Whoa, that made it, like, amazing," right?
yeah, yeah. And so fast forward to the end of the day, I just beat myself up
Uh,
terribly about it. Like, you weren't great. It wasn't great. I'm just going through this whole thing. And I got on a flight about 2 hours later and I was like, man, that was
mm.
just like an epic failure. And you should be embarrassed. I mean,
Oh,
I know some of you are like listening to this and you're like, you shouldn't be telling yourself. See, that's the thing in leadership. We know these things, but we
yeah.
often still do these things. So I'm like trying to give you like real time. This is literally like 4 days ago.
Yeah.
And so I had gotten some great feedback and on feedback on the day. And then there was some, other stuff. And like I knew it was coming and that's okay. And I thought I was like ready and tough for it. But I beat myself up so much so that like I just it's kind of like your NBA finals game, and this is actually what helped me
It felt like the whole
process it.
stadium was booing on you, booing at you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it did. And I thought about it from a sports perspective. You show up in the next game and you do your best.
Uh-huh.
And they're not talking about the game before.
Yeah.
They're talking about this game, right? And so for me, I started reflecting on, and this was the question that was very helpful to me. Jason, what are you most like afraid of when you think about that as a failure? Like, what do you think about the most, or what are you most afraid of when you think
Yeah.
about as a failure? And it was like, it was about like being embarrassed or thinking, well, people don't think I'm competent or that I
Uh-huh.
can do it or that I'm, and this was it, that I bat 1,000 or I'm perfect in every single situation that I'm in.
Yeah.
And so there is this aspect of when I reflected, I thought, nobody expects that. That's just me.
Yeah.
Everybody knew it was a pilot. Version 2 is going to be better than version 1. Show up in version 2, kick butt. Nobody remembers version 1 because they're like, dude, that version 2 is awesome, right?
Yeah.
And so I kind of worked through, but I had to take the time to reflect and actually ask myself helpful questions to get out of a funky spot that I was in, and come to find out I was the only person that was there.
Yeah.
And so when we think about leadership and we think about this chapter, I really was at this crossroads, and it surprised me because I don't normally find myself at this exact moment and it
In a book.
consuming me so much. Yeah. About, all right, Jason, are you going to get bitter about this, or are you going to like reflect, take some things, extrapolate, and get better with it moving forward? So
Yeah.
anyways, I kind of lived this out. It wasn't just a book and it wasn't just a chapter. It was literally 4 days ago, me navigating the very thing that we are talking about, on reflecting and figuring out ways how to get better and move forward.
Yeah, I think that comes from I mean, we talked about this I think a little bit last time, but the idea that, when you're young in your career, when you're young in ministry, when you're young in anything, right? Like there's this element of like you are untested. And
Hmm.
so failures don't sting as much. But once you've had a series of successes, once you have some approval, this role, I know you have an NDA, but like this role is like you have someone that is like put a stamp of approval on you. Like they're like, we are hiring you because we believe you are a an amazing basketball player. You're an all-star or whatever, right? And so it feels like the pressure to always be perfect
Yeah.
grows as you get
Yeah.
out.
That's
And I
right.
think because of that, you can either believe the lie that I am perfect, or you can just kind of try to, deny that you're not perfect. But then that leads to one of the other elements of this, the idea of humility.
Mm,
Failure should lead us to be humble.
mm.
And if we don't regularly experience failure, we start believing the lie about ourselves that we are perfect, that we always bat 100 or 1,000. I don't know. I always use sports metaphors and I don't even watch sports that much, but love sports. They're great metaphors, but you also have to know sports. But, and so I think about that with humility, like really realizing that this could not work. This might not work, rather. And I need to be prepared to pivot quickly or to ask the right questions or to ask
Mm.
someone, what went wrong here. Uh, and just really observe failure for insights. So that's what he
Yeah,
talks about.
that's
Get
good.
humble, but then get humble enough to actually be able to ask questions of other people. And he lists some of the things that he got from, some of these insights that he looks for whenever he talks to people at the failure. One of the ones in particular I loved is the idea of cutting your losses quickly.
Mm,
And I think about that for you.
yep.
So, okay, you felt like it was a loss. You cut it quickly, and then you figure out, okay, what's the next thing? What's the next iteration? What was the missing piece? What was the thing?
Yeah.
And if we don't cut those losses, again to that sports analogy of the team, right? Like the Spurs won last night. They had lost the 2 previous games. They cut the losses. They didn't completely leave the failure in the past. They said, okay, what do we need to change? Now let's not assume it's going to be a failure again because we failed 2 times. Like, let's
Mhm,
make those changes and now let's move forward. And I think
mhm.
that's another hard part is like, okay, yes, you see the failure, you evaluate it, but then actually acting on that evaluation is a hard part for a lot of people.
It is, and it's hard because I think sometimes people could take failures and setbacks, and it can make them hard, right?
Sure.
Or we let it make us hard versus, the opposite of that, and, how do you not stay stuck in it?
Yeah.
Um, because,
So you're
you know
saying some people kind of get rigid from those failures, or kind of reminds me of that, like,
Yeah.
that like there's like this kind of theological complicated idea of like God hardened Pharaoh's heart. You remember that in the Bible in
Mhm.
Exodus where it says God hardened Pharaoh's heart. And then I think it's Erasmus, his explanation of that is that the same sun that hardens the clay softens the wax, right? So like we have the same situation, but depending on our heart, we either get rigid or we get softened and more pliable. And so that is like we need to respond correctly to it.
Yeah, and I
Sorry, I
I think
interrupted you, but I just love that.
no,
I love that explanation of like how the same thing can happen to 2 people and it'll either soften you or it'll harden you.
yeah, and when you think about it, failure. And I think that a key portal or a key bridgeway to this, of using it to your advantage is, are you going to let failure deepen you or harden you? And really, so much comes in the reflection and the response. And so, yeah, I mean, I rarely get myself into the headspace I was in on Friday, but I told my wife, I'm like, something caught me by surprise. And so it was a humbling moment.
Mhm.
But I knew come today, I had to lead something else in front of people. And so if I stayed there, then it would show up today. And guess what?
Yeah.
Today is another opportunity to step in to have a great at bat or to shoot the shot or to, whatever sports analogy we want to
Whatever
use.
sports analogy I don't
Yeah, that's right.
understand.
That's right. Insert, your next golf shot, whatever it is.
Yeah.
So, but here's the thing. Pain and failure by itself or by themselves, they don't produce growth. I think it's pausing enough to reflect and respond, like that creates the growth. And there has to be an aspect of ownership, because when I think about, this situation I'm in, and really there are other situations, sometimes it is related to something we did, but then other times we're on teams where maybe a project was a failure,
Yeah.
because of somebody else. And then that's where it's easy to kind of do the blame and pointing and all that. So it's like, all right, what is yours to own? Especially as it relates to a failure. And I think, working in church world for so long on staff, but also as a coach, a consultant, one of the things that I see, but I see this on the corporate side too. We want people to see us a certain way.
Hmm.
We want
Yeah.
people to believe the story that we're giving to them. And so if anything disrupts that story, that was my mess up on Friday. People had an image of Jason. People already were talking about Jason, and then
Yeah.
Jason did this thing. And again, got great feedback from it. A lot
Yeah.
of it was me, but my number one question really was, well, does it change the way they already think about me? Like, I'm like, God, how did I get into that trap?
Yeah.
So I had to own that, and I had to ask some questions and talk to somebody, kind of work my way out of it, because guess what? I'm going to get another opportunity soon, and I don't want to bring that negative stuff into this, opportunity next. And I think sometimes what we don't do is we don't use failure as a leadership developer,
Mhm.
when I think that's what failure can be.
Yeah, and I think so often there's this, I mean, you said it, we are so worried about what people think about us
Yeah.
that we create this delusion, especially in ministry. I've seen this so much. We create this delusional, we call it faith, but it's this delusion around ourselves. Um, I love conferences, but from the first conference that I attended, I
Hmm.
saw this situation where
Mm.
there was just this posturing that happened around us. We're waiting for a main session and someone's like, "Oh yeah, we're running 6 services and 3 campuses and we have so many volunteers." And I think the first conference I went to, I was maybe 20 years old, and all of my team were like, under 16 years old. I was a worship leader, and they were getting grounded regularly, so they couldn't come to rehearsal because they were like doing things they shouldn't be doing. And I was dealing with this, like these inexperienced musicians, inexperienced volunteers. And I was like, we had 500 people in our church, and I'm like, I am not, and I felt so beneath everyone because they were
Mm.
posturing themselves. At the same time, I'm like, what are you doing at this conference if everything's going so wonderfully? Like, why are you going
Mm.
to a conference, right? Like, what do you like? You don't need help. And so, what they got from that conference was probably nothing because they
Mm.
were trying to buy into their lie that everything was wonderful. They were growing so rapidly. Their volunteer teams were killing it. And whereas I felt desperate. I'm like, I need some help here. And so I
Mm.
feel like I grew more from those conferences than from the people that were like posturing themselves a certain way. Again, that was me as a 20-year-old. I was trying to figure it out in ministry. I didn't know what I was doing. I still probably don't know what I'm doing, but I feel like I've had some success, so I must know what I'm doing, right? But I do think that we learn more whenever we acknowledge that we don't know what we're doing. Um, and I think we just buy into this trap, either of delusion or because we've had past success and we start thinking we know what we're doing. And both of
Yeah.
those are really harmful.
Yeah. It really is. When I think about, okay, let me ask you a question. When you look back over your life, would you say most of your lessons and growth came through difficulty?
Yeah. I think about that a lot, resiliency, right? Like
Yeah.
I think about that as a parent, and we've talked about this, the
Yeah.
idea that, you know, we tend to shield our kids from any negative experience. But then you look at, I see the story of like a Dwayne Wade, again, an athlete. We're really hitting those
Yeah, you
athlete.
are. Yeah, you
I
are.
am. I don't know why. My wife's really into sports and she loves Dwayne Wade. She's from Miami, so but like you see his experience growing up without a father, and his mom was like pretty hardcore on him. He developed resiliency,
Mhm,
and obviously getting to the NBA, becoming a finals, becoming a champion, all of these things came from him having to deal with difficult problems, him having to deal with the inimeal situation.
mhm,
And we don't want that. We live in a really plush world. And he talked about this in the chapter
mm,
that like we live in a Western society where like for the most part everything's good. We have access to anything immediately. I think about, everything is drive through. Like I don't have to go into a store anymore. I just have it
mm,
brought out to my car. Like there's zero resilience in my life because everything is easy for me. But
mm,
whenever we have to face those difficulties, so I do feel like I face difficulties when it comes to business.
mm,
I have an idea, I don't have money for it. I don't want to spend money on it because I feel like it's irresponsible. I try something and it feels like I'm just like trying to push a push a rock up a muddy hill and it's not
mm,
working. And so I try something different and I try something different. And the things that people see that I've tried are the successes, but the things that
mm,
people don't see, it's because they've been a failure and they don't even see that. Uh, and I think that's the thing. Like we don't show people failure, or people don't see the failure, and that's kind of a benefit. It's kind of a grace, honestly. Like most people don't see my failures. Thank God. Whereas once you get to a level of success, that makes you more afraid to fail because people will see the failure.
Yeah, and it's interesting on the failure front, when I think about people that I enjoy being around, people that have failed because it generates and creates this maturity, this
Mhm.
empathy, this, like, human part to them. In fact, and again, this is not every single person that experiences failures, but there's a lot. It just makes them feel real. So if you're around those people, you're like, they feel normal to you, and they feel,
Yeah.
and then there's this tension, like, if we enjoy that, then why can't we become that? And there's this gap in between, and maybe, just maybe, the maybe we can reframe failure from something that's always about how people see us or judge us, or whatever maybe we can kind of reframe it to, you know what if failure actually allowed you to, especially the reflection and response to it, allowed you to better connect with people, allowed you to
Mhm.
prioritize relationships, allowed you to, it gave you permission to engage with people in conversations you wouldn't have before. It actually served as like fuel and momentum to do the next thing, because the more you do it, the more comfortable you become with it, the more people are willing to trust you because they see you as human and willing to take a risk, having failure, reflecting and responding to it. So there's this aspect to, like, if we could change maybe how we see it, and I'm not saying it's easy,
Yeah.
me too. I wonder if we would allow it to do work in us so that we could look at it a little bit differently, so that way it could affect people differently in a way that it could be positive and allow us to be better going forward, allow us as a team to be better going forward versus avoiding it, hiding it, disguising it, excusing it.
Yeah.
Um, defending it. There's all these things we kind of posture, like you said, we posture and jockey for certain things because we try to control the narrative versus, I wonder if we change the way we looked at it, more transparent about it, sit in the discomfort of it, and allow it to produce things like empathy and care and courage and better relationships. And just maybe that helps us to move forward.
Yeah. I think the benefit, the byproduct of doing that is something, and this is a big idea to put at the end of a podcast, but is you can become irreplaceable in your role. Meaning, I think about, I was a designer and I was so worried that I was no longer going to be the cool designer. I was a worship leader. I was worried I was no longer be the cool worship leader. I was
Mm,
whatever it is in our society, there's this value placed on youth where you are it in this certain age
mm,
range. And it's terrifying for people because once you lose that, you have nothing unless you go from being the person doing all the cool things to being the person coaching all the people doing all the cool things.
that's
You
good.
can be the person equipping, the person encouraging, the person that's uh, helping them navigate that. And I think whenever we respond properly to failure, we get that humility that makes the younger generation actually want to listen to us.
Yeah.
We have enough wisdom and experience to actually have something to offer that's not just like, well, this is what I did. You need to do that. Hey, this is the thing I did. I would stay away from that, but you could probably really do this, right? Like we go from being the people that are doing the cool things to being the people that are equipping the people doing the cool things.
Mm,
And that is where we have longevity. I think about like a John Maxwell. Like he's writing books, he's doing this coaching stuff. He's older in years, right? Like he's on in years, but he's been able to shift from being the person always doing the things to being the person that's empowering the people doing the things. And I
yeah.
think that's a result of whenever we do this correctly, we get to be able to be in that role. We get to shift into that role. And I think for pastors, I think there are a lot of pastors that are like, am I aging out? Is my congregation eventually going to age out? Am I no longer going to be the cool pastor? Or again,
Mhm,
designers, worship leaders, whatever it is on staff that you do,
mhm,
there's that fear that I'm not going to be it. Someone is going to replace me in my role. But if you can make this shift of becoming the coach, of becoming the empowerer, of becoming the person who creates the structure for the people who need to create, you can have longevity.
mm. So, as you think about your role, and we head to the finish line of this podcast episode, you're probably thinking about a recent failure, disappointment in your life, and
Or
maybe
you're not
you're like
because you're
I.
pretending you don't fail.
That is true. That is very true. But just
But
pretend you're
try to
human.
find one, okay?
Yeah, dig deep.
Dig
Imagine
deep.
if you have one, a disappointment, a failure, and maybe that thing is just tripping you up. And maybe people know, maybe they don't know.
Mhm.
I think my question to you as you think about this is what disappointment, what failure might actually be trying to develop something in you so that you can have the permission to invest and lead other people and to expand your impact and to have that longevity because you're not going to try to survive a failure. Like that's not what leaders do, but what leaders do is how can I become wiser because of it?
Mhm.
And the only way to do that is to slow down enough to reflect and respond in a way it makes you human. We all fail. We don't have to hide it. It's what do we do with it? And I think John is a great example, not only just in this book, but in other books of failing and living to tell about it. Because you know what? That's exactly what we can happen. So don't waste a disappointment. Don't waste a failure. Let it develop something in you, and watch your impact and influence expand.
That was good. Hey, this is the end of the episode. Hope you liked it. If you did like it, make sure you're subscribed if you're not already. Find us on social media, talk to us. We love to chat with people. But we'll see you next week for chapter 5. Whether you read it, whether you don't, we know you'll get something good out of it.